Norman by Michelle Olson. Like all Buttons, Norman was a sensible, well-rounded individual. He kept his coat closed, which meant his person was warm and comfortable. Norman felt needed, and that made him very happy. But recently, Norman had been feeling a little down. His life was suddenly changing, and he was only hanging on by a thread. Then the unthinkable happened. Norman felt completely lost. He wandered aimlessly. Norman wondered if his person was cold and how the coat would stay closed without him. He remembered how much he loved being needed. Norman decided a new job might help him feel better. What job does the world need most? He thought. A superhero, of course! Catching bad guys and foiling evil plots sounded perfect. Norman could transform into Norman the Super Buttman. Or maybe just Button Man. This is a great idea, Norman thought as he headed to his parents' house to get started. Norman spent hours making his costume, but when he looked in the mirror, he was discouraged. He wasn't quite the superhero he had hoped to become. Sure, his new green underwear looked great, but his muscles just weren't big enough. I guess a button superhero does seem a little silly, he thought. When Norman put away his mother's sewing machine, he spotted his old camera. Maybe he could be a photographer. People would love to see his unique view of the world, and that would certainly make him feel needed. It turns out being that small really limits your viewpoint. The magazine publishers laughed at Norman's photos. Apparently, people don't want to see things from a button's perspective. Norman was determined to think of a great new job, even if he had to stay up all night. In the glow of his backyard campfire, Norman had his best idea yet. What about firefighting? That job was definitely needed. If cats got stuck in trees, he could only imagine how many pillars needed rescuing. Norman soon learned two very important things. Buttons are flammable, and he probably should have gone to firefighting school. As Norman soaked in a cold bath to soothe his burns, he realized the bathtub was the answer. He could be a plumber. Plumbers made bathtubs and toilets work, and everyone needed those. It turned out that becoming a plumber was just a pipe dream. Norman began to wonder if there was any job he could do. As Norman sat in the park, feeling depressed, he spotted a dog. Maybe being a dog sitter would help him feel needed. He could take puppies on walks and read them bedtime stories. Feeling rather happy about his decision, Norman hopped off his daisy and thought, they're just dogs. How hard could it be? Apparently, it was very hard, especially for someone only 2 inches tall. Norman had been laughed at, melted, nearly drowned, and dragged through the mud. I'm not good at anything, he thought. Maybe I should just give up. As he waited to be recycled, Norman wondered what he would be turned into. The thought of no longer being a button brought tears to his eyes. What if they melted him into something gross like a toilet brush? I really need to stop being so emotional, Norman thought. After all, I'm a button, and we're known for keeping things together. That's right, Norman was a button, so why was he trying to be something else? No wonder he was failing at those other jobs. He needed a job only a button could do. Norman felt new hope. He didn't know exactly how or where he would find his next job, but he felt he was getting closer. If he had a nose, certainly his next job would be right under it. And of course, there it was, as obvious as the empty spot on that teddy bear's face. Once again, he felt the happiness of feeling needed. He finally found his new job. And this time, he made sure he was double knotted. The end.